Feel the high-voltage energy of a story that refused to be silenced by the passing of time. We bring you the electric reality of life's most intense confrontations, wrapped in a cinematic glow that never fades. Hit that subscribe button now and power up your imagination with us.
I drive a 2016 Civic with a cracked passenger mirror that I keep meaning to fix and never do. There's a reusable grocery bag permanently living in the back seat, a half-empty bottle of ibuprofen in the cup holder, and a parking permit from my old apartment complex still hanging from the rear view because I like the way it catches the light in the morning. It's not a glamorous car. It's mine. I paid for it myself. I maintain it myself. And when I drive it to work at 6:30 in the morning with my coffee going cold in the cup holder, I feel something I didn't have a word for until recently. Free. I didn't always feel that way. For most of my 20s, I felt like I was auditioning for a role I never quite got cast in, the role of daughter who was enough. I ran lines every holiday. I showed up early, stayed late, brought the right food, said the right things, and every single time I drove home on the highway wondering what I'd done wrong. Let me back up. My nan raised me from the time I was 9, after my mom got sick and then got worse and then was just gone in the way that doesn't have a clean ending. Nan was steady in the way old houses are steady, not glamorous, not modern, but solid in the foundation. She smelled like lavender and burnt coffee, and she let me sit on the counter while she cooked, and she never once made me feel like a burden. When I say she raised me, I don't mean she fed me and kept me alive. I mean she taught me what love looks like when it actually shows up. My dad's side of the family was a different kind of education. My dad came back into my life when I was 19 and he was newly remarried and apparently feeling generous with second chances. I was in college, working part-time at a sandwich shop, surviving on dining hall pasta and financial aid. He called out of nowhere one October and said he wanted to rebuild, his word, rebuild, like we were a deck that had rotted out and just needed new lumber. I was 19. I said yes. His wife, I'll call her my stepmother, which is technically accurate and emotionally hilarious, had 2 kids from her first marriage. A son who was 16 and mostly invisible, and a daughter, Bryn, who was 22 and had decided before we even met that she didn't like me. I don't know what I did. I think my crime was existing. Bryn had long dark hair and opinions about everything and a way of talking that made you feel like you'd already said the wrong thing before you opened your mouth. She lived at home still, taking online classes, working a few shifts a week at a boutique downtown. She drove a car her mom had bought her outright and regularly needed help with gas money. I worked 30 hours a week during college. I took out loans. I graduated in 4 years with a degree in healthcare administration and immediately got a job at a hospital system doing billing compliance. It wasn't exciting. It paid reasonably well. I was proud of it in a quiet way that I learned pretty quickly not to share around my dad's table because there was always something slightly off about my accomplishments in that house. Like they were fine, but not the point. The point was Bryn. Bryn was thinking about going back to school. Bryn was really finding herself. Bryn had started this little Etsy shop that hadn't launched yet, but had so much potential. My dad talked about her the way people talk about a stock they're sure is going to take off any day now. I told myself it was fine. Family is complicated. He'd missed years with me. Maybe this was how he compensated. I read articles about blended families. I tried. What I didn't notice at first was the shape of things. The way every family dinner cost me something. Not just money, though that became part of it too. It cost me weekends. It cost me energy I didn't have to spare. It cost me the quiet Sunday mornings I'd been slowly learning to protect. The first time I paid for a family dinner, it was framed as a favor. My dad had forgotten his card. He does this, I've learned, with the regularity of a person who has never actually forgotten their card in their life, and the bill came and there was a pause and everyone looked at me and I was 23 and so badly wanted to be useful that I put down my card and said it was fine. Bryn got the steak. Her mom got the crab cake appetizer. Nobody offered to pay me back. I didn't ask. This happened again. And then again. And then again. And then it became the shape of things. By the time I was 26, I had paid for somewhere between 12 and 15 family dinners. I had spotted my dad money for a car repair. I had bought Bryn a birthday gift every year. Real gifts, thought-out gifts, things she'd mentioned wanting, and received in return a card that was always signed just her name, no message. I had shown up to every holiday, every birthday, every casual Sunday thing they texted about with 3 hours notice because I wanted so badly to have a family that I kept paying the entrance fee without reading what was actually on the ticket. My Nan saw it. She'd raise an eyebrow when I mentioned things. She never said outright that she thought I was being taken advantage of, because that wasn't her style. She'd say things like, "And what did you get out of that, sweetheart?" and let me sit with the answer. Usually the answer was, nothing. A receipt in a headache and the particular exhaustion of having performed warmth for 4 hours in a room where nobody was performing it back. The birthday dinner, that's what I think of as the before and after. My dad turned 60 in March. His wife organized a dinner at a place called Alderveen, which is the kind of restaurant that doesn't list prices on the menu, because if you need to know the price, you should reconsider whether you belong there. I'd been once before for a work event, and I remembered that the pasta entrees ran around $65 to $80, and the appetizers weren't much less. The invitation came via group text. Just the address, the time, "I can't wait to celebrate together," from my stepmother with 2 balloon emojis. I assumed, and this was my mistake, I know that now, that my dad and his wife were hosting. That when you invite people to a $60 pasta restaurant for your birthday, you're treating. I brought my daughter, she's 4. Her name is Lila, and she is the single best decision I have ever made, and she had recently become obsessed with fancy restaurants because we'd taken her to a nicer brunch place for my birthday, and she'd gotten to order her own orange juice and had talked about it for 3 weeks afterward. She was so excited. She wore her yellow dress with the little buttons and asked me 4 times on the drive over if this was the fancy place, and I said, "Yes, baby. This is the fancy place." We arrived a few minutes early. The restaurant had soft lighting and white tablecloths, and the kind of quiet that means everyone is aware of how much everything costs. Lila held my hand very seriously and whispered, "It smells expensive, Mommy," and I almost laughed out loud. My dad was already there with his wife and Bryn. Bryn had brought her boyfriend, who I'd met once before, and had the energy of someone who finds most things slightly beneath him. They'd ordered a bottle of wine before we sat down. I settled Lila in and looked at the menu. The kids section had a pasta dish for $18. I looked at it, thought about my budget for the week, and decided yes, of course she could have the kids' pasta. She was so excited it was fine. The waiter came around and we ordered. Lila ordered her pasta and asked very politely if it could have no green things, and the waiter said absolutely and wrote it down, and she beamed like he had given her a gift. My dad ordered a ribeye, $68. Bryn ordered the handmade tagliatelle with truffle cream, $74. Her boyfriend ordered the same. His wife ordered salmon and a second appetizer. I ordered a chicken dish that was the second cheapest entree and tried not to do math in my head. We were halfway through the meal when my dad's wife mentioned something about splitting the bill however makes sense, and I noticed she was looking at me when she said it, not at the table, at me. I kept eating. Tried to read it as a casual comment. Then Bryn started boxing her leftovers. She'd eaten maybe a third of the tagliatelle, and she was packing up the rest in the takeout container the waiter had brought, and she said, without looking up, that she was going to finish it tomorrow because it was so good. Lila had eaten all her pasta. I mean all of it. She had used the bread to soak up the sauce and then looked at me with enormous eyes and asked if there was more. There wasn't, not on her plate, and I said we'd get dessert in a little bit. Okay, we'd see. Then my dad said something. He didn't say it loudly. He said it in the tone he uses for things that seem obvious to him, the tone that makes you feel like you're the unreasonable one for being surprised. He nodded at Lila's empty plate and said, "She can have something more at home. We'll do dessert just for the adults." I looked at him. He was already looking back at the table, pouring more wine. Like he'd said something entirely normal. Lila didn't fully understand, I think. She looked at the dessert menu the waiter had left and then looked at me, waiting. I reached over and gently moved it away from her and said quietly that we'd have something at home. She accepted this with the trust that 4-year-olds have, the trust that assumes you know what's happening and it will be okay. I sat there for a moment. Bryn had pushed her boxed tagliatelle to the edge of the table, ready to take home. $74 of pasta, packed up for tomorrow, and my daughter, who had eaten everything on her plate, clean to the sauce, wasn't getting dessert because my dad had decided. I waited for someone to say something, to walk it back, to look over at Lila and say, "Actually, of course, let's get her something." Nobody said anything. The waiter came back. He looked at the table. He had the dessert menus folded under his arm, and he started to speak, and my dad started to wave him over to begin the end of meal conversation, and I felt something in me go very, very still. I know the feeling now. It's not anger exactly, though anger is part of it. It's more like a door closing, quietly, not slamming, just a soft, definitive click. I said, "Actually, can she see the dessert menu?" My dad looked at me. I just said, "I heard what you said." I smiled at the waiter. "Can she see it?" The waiter handed Lila the dessert menu, and she took it with both hands like it was something sacred. She couldn't read yet, but she found the picture of the chocolate lava cake and pointed to it and looked at me, and I said yes. My dad was quiet, his wife was quiet, his wife was quiet. Bryn was looking at her phone. Lila got her lava cake. It came with a small scoop of vanilla ice cream, and she ate every bite of that too. When the bill came, my dad's wife placed it in the center of the table. Not near him. Not near her. In the center. My dad said, "Why don't we just split it even? 4 adults and 1 child." The bill was, I looked, $342 before tip. Even split, that was $85.50 per person. My chicken dish was $41. Lila's kids' pasta was $18. My total should have been $59 plus tip. I thought about the ribeye, the 2 tagliatellas, the second appetizer, the bottle of wine I hadn't had a glass of because I was driving, the lava cake, which, yes, I had ordered, and yes, I would pay for. I thought about Bryn's leftovers in their little container, $74 of pasta headed home for someone's lunch tomorrow on my partial contribution. I thought about what my dad had said to my daughter. I said, "I'll take care of our portion." My dad looked up. "We're splitting it even. I'm going to pay for what Lila and I had." There was a pause. The particular pause that happens when someone realizes you are not going to do the thing they assumed you would do. "That's not how it works," he said. "We're a family." I looked at him. I thought about that word, family. I'd been turning that word over in my hands for 7 years, trying to figure out what it meant in this house, what it cost, what it got you. "Leela and I had the chicken and the kids' pasta and 1 dessert," I said. "I'm happy to pay for that and tip on our portion." His wife said something about it being easier to just split it. Bryn was still on her phone. Her boyfriend was examining his wine glass. The waiter came back, and I asked him very quietly to please separate our check. He looked at the table for half a second and then said, "Of course," and did it without comment, because he was a professional and he understood, I think, more than he let on. My portion came to $71 with tax. I put down my card. I tipped 30% because I believe in tipping well, and because the waiter had been kind to Lila and had brought her the dessert menu without making a thing of it. My dad did not speak to me again during dinner. His wife made a few careful comments about traffic and the weather. Bryn said something about a sale at her favorite boutique. Her boyfriend ate the last of his wine. I put Leela's coat on her and told her to say thank you to Grandpa for the dinner, because she doesn't need to carry whatever this is, and she did, in her serious 4-year-old way, and he softened briefly, the way people do around small children, even when they're being rigid about everything else. We drove home. Lila fell asleep before we hit the highway, still in her yellow dress, lava cake chocolate at the corner of her mouth. I drove in the quiet for a long time. I didn't cry. I thought I might, but I didn't. I felt instead that odd stillness again, the door clicking feeling, and I let it settle. The next morning, I had 3 texts. One from my dad saying I had embarrassed him on his birthday and he hoped I was proud of myself. One from his wife saying she was sorry I'd felt uncomfortable and she hoped we could talk about it. One from Bryn asking if I could help cover a car repair she was dealing with. $220 she'd pay me back when she could. I sat with my coffee and read all 3 texts in order. Then I put my phone face down on the table. Lila came padding out in her pajamas and climbed into my lap and asked if we could have the leftover breakfast muffins. And I said yes. And I held her and we sat in the morning light, and I felt something that took me a few minutes to name. Relief. I didn't respond to any of the texts that day. Or the next day. I thought about what I wanted to say, which was different from what I would have said a year ago, or 3 years ago. A year ago I would have apologized. I would have second-guessed the dinner. I would have texted back some version of "I'm sorry if I made things weird, I didn't mean to, can we talk?" and then absorbed whatever response came and tried to reshape myself into something that fit better. I wasn't that person anymore. I wasn't sure exactly when it happened. Somewhere between the 3rd time I paid for a family dinner and wasn't thanked, and the moment my dad waved away his granddaughter's dessert menu without looking at her face, I texted my dad back 4 days later. I said that I hoped he'd had a good birthday overall and that I was going to take some time away from family dinners for a while. I said I loved him. I did not apologize. I didn't respond to his wife's text. I didn't respond to Bryn's. The next few weeks were quieter than I expected. There was a guilt period. I won't pretend there wasn't. I'd lie awake and do the thing where you replay everything and wonder if you were the unreasonable one. But then I'd get to the part with the dessert menu every single time and the replaying would stop. Because I knew what I had seen and what I had felt and what my daughter's face had looked like when I moved the menu gently away from her reach, and I knew what it cost me to walk that back even a little. My man came over for dinner about 2 weeks after the birthday. She brought a lemon cake from the bakery she likes, and she sat at my kitchen table and we talked. I told her the whole thing. She listened without interrupting, which is something she does better than almost anyone I know. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "You know what your mother would have done?" I said I didn't. "She would have ordered the most expensive thing on the menu," Nan said, "and then forgotten her wallet." I laughed until I cried. Both things at once. That happens sometimes. Nan cut us each a piece of cake and we ate it at the table, and she asked about Lila's preschool and I told her about the art project Lila had brought home that week, something involving sponge-printed butterflies and an alarming amount of purple glitter. And we talked about ordinary things for 2 hours and I drove home feeling lighter than I had in years. The family texts have slowed. My dad sent a few follow-ups that I read without responding to. His wife tried once more. Bryn sent a second message about the car repair, longer this time, explaining the situation in more detail. I read it and put my phone down. Here's what I know now that I didn't know at 19. Family is not a blank check. Love is not a word that automatically covers whatever comes after it. You can love people and still recognize that the way they treat you costs you something, and there is a point. It comes for everyone eventually if you're paying attention, where you have to decide whether you're going to keep paying or whether you're going to put your card away. I put my card away. Mila started a new art thing last week. She's into watercolors now. Big swooping shapes and colors she names herself. She made one for Nan, a yellow and blue swirl that she told me was a fancy restaurant but nicer. And I held that painting for a long time before I put it in an envelope. I'm not angry anymore. I'm not sure I was ever really angry. Or if I was, it's dissolved into something cleaner. Clarity, maybe. The knowledge that I did the right thing, not the loud thing. Not the dramatic thing. The quiet thing. I paid for my dinner and my daughter's dinner, and I tipped the waiter, and I said goodnight, and I left. I drive to work in the morning in my Civic with the cracked mirror and the parking permit catching a light and the reusable grocery bag in the back that I always mean to bring in and never do, and I feel it again every time. Free.